Okay, thank you for watching these videos. Thank you guys for the support. My name is Kamia Simon Peter from Boogie Code, and then I'm trying to explain the MTN mobile money integration API, and then I've done 7 videos so far, but then on the WhatsApp group I discovered that there are some questions. I've also interacted with some of you via the WhatsApp group and via the YouTube channel. Alright, so this is what I discovered. I discovered that I need to explain the use case. Now, MTN has its own use case for the documentation. There is a use case for everything. There is a use case. For example, this is a use case. This is a use case of creating the API user. They are telling you that you are posting, okay, to the wallet platform, and then this is what you post. You're posting a header that has a subscription key, reference ID, and then the body, which is the callback host, and then this is the response you get from the wallet platform. That is MTN, from the MTN server, and then the response you're supposed to get is 201. Now, these are good use cases, and please, you're supposed to follow them. They are the ones that I think I explained them in the first video, that is understanding the documentation. But then there's a logical use case that I'm trying to explain that I find people find difficult to create. Okay, so let me go back to that. Now, I have a box here which is applicational website. Okay, so this is your applicational website, and then this is MTN. So take this as the MTN server or the MTN sandbox, and then these are the customers. Which customers are going to be using your application? Which customers are going to be using your application? All right, so let me do some illustrator here. I put an arrow. All right, so I'm doing this in Illustrator so that we understand each other. Okay, and then I do copy this. So these are the different customers. That's why I used different colors for the customers. Okay, these customers are using your application. Now, when you are registering for the first time, you the owner of this application, the owner of this application or website. When you are registering, you the owner of the application of the website. One, you choose which product you're using. Are you using collections, disbursement, remittance, ABCD, name them. Are you getting it? And then you are provided a key and a password. You are provided a user key and a password. Now, these items that you are provided are for you and your application. Now, your application is the one that connects to MTN. Your application is the one that connects to the MTN server. Okay, so therefore, for your application to connect to the MTN server, they expect you to have a user key, okay, and a password. Now, for your customers to transact, so MTN is just a transaction medium to help transact money. Okay, MTN is just a transaction medium to help transact money for your application between you and your customers. So let me name this right and put the arrow. So I need double arrows. So MTN is a transaction medium that connects you and your customers. Okay, So your customers transact to you. All right, let me put another arrow here. And which arrow I'm going to have? Okay, I've done it the other way. All right, so your customers are transacting transaction medium. Your customers are transacting and paying for your products through MTN MoMo Pay. Okay, therefore, you have an account, a special account with MTN MoMo Pay. So whatever your customers buy, it is MTN as a transaction medium, but MTN only knows you, the owner of the application, because you registered with your user key and password. Now, therefore, the first, it is called what? OCPM. Let me copy it here. All right, so it is called, let me come to the testing. All right, let me go to the products. Sandbox. Let me go to the sandbox. All right, so the first, the OCP MK, yes, that one is constant. It only changes. This one is constant and it only changes in the what? In the sandbox. Let me give it a different color. Okay, so this is constant, it only changes in the sandbox. And then the first UUID you create that belongs to, the X reference ID, okay, the first UUID you create that belongs to the X reference ID, that one too won't change because it is for you, it is for your application, and these are what MTN is using, these are what your application is using to communicate to MTN, because these are what correspond to the user that registered to MTN. Okay? Now, this is what MTN expects if it is to make a communication with your application. Now, what do customers need? For you to be able to track your customers, MTN expects this. MTN expects these credentials that were provided to you attached to a token, a transaction token. Okay, I need to select this. Attached to a transaction token. Okay. So you'll see the transaction token when you start working with that. But then, when the customer makes an order, they are given a transaction token. Okay, and that transaction token is given by your application. So the transaction token is given by your application, okay, to track which customer, okay, is taking what service or which transaction. Therefore, each customer that makes a transaction will be required to have a transaction token for each transaction. Okay, but now, what if you yourself, you want to track to give a response? Now, the server wants to give a response back to your application because okay, now the moment the token goes to the, sorry, let me do that again. The moment the token goes to MTN, MTN will send back to the customers. MTN will send back to the customers a given communication. Which communication? That, hey, you know what? You want to make a transaction. Just a moment. That, hey, you know what? You want to make a transaction, okay? And that transaction, someone wants you to pay. So this customer has requested to pay and they have been given a token, and then MTN is saying, please enter your PIN, enter the PIN that belongs to your line because someone wants to access your mobile wallet, okay? And then how does MTN track that the response from the customer, if the customer has responded either yes or no? If the customer has responded either yes, Y stroke N. So MTN wants to know that now the customer has responded yes or no. So the yes or no will go back to the customer, okay? The yes or no will go back to the customer. From the customer's response. Okay, let me do that. And do this. Let me invert there. So the yes or no will go back to the customer, and the customer will go back to the MTN server from the customer, and the MTN server will communicate to your application. But now, how does your application get to know that out of all these customers, it is this transaction that has got a PIN, okay? It requires one, a transaction X reference ID. So this is where your X reference ID here, okay? An X reference ID, which should also, I think it can be brown, okay? An X reference ID. Therefore, when a customer sends a request to pay for the service of your application, they must have a token, which token should be tied to this X reference ID. Okay? Now, you want to check from the MTN server the customer's response. Therefore, what do you submit to the MTN server? You submit the same X reference ID that was given to you. So therefore, that is why here in the documentation, that is why here you sent a request to pay, okay? And then you get from the request to pay, after getting the token, you sent a request to pay. And then you get from the request to pay which X reference ID corresponds with that token and the transaction that is there at that moment, okay? So after getting that, that is now, you see, you have to make a request to pay with the X reference ID to know which customer is corresponding with whatever item that you have here. And then you evaluate the status, okay? And this status, and that status that you've evaluated is what you use to answer what customer may either the transaction is being successful or it is not. So thank you for watching this, and then thank you for watching this, okay? And then let me get back to you to know now, to answer how do you go live. Now, just more about this, that why every customer must have an X reference ID with their transaction. What if this customer sends one order, okay? And then they are sending the same order with the X reference ID. You see that? There is an issue there. Therefore, each transaction must have a unique X reference ID created for it. Because imagine the same customer, they ordered an item, okay? And then after a few minutes, they discover they want to order another item. How will you know that these are different items?